So, should refugees be sent to Rwanda? Joining me now is human rights lawyer Peter Tatchell. Peter, how are you?
Well, first of all, I'm not a lawyer, I'm a human rights defender, but I am fine and very pleased to be on your show.
I did think that, actually. Is that a promotion, then?
No.
OK. Have you ever been to Rwanda?
I haven't.
Would you like to go? It's not an offer.
Not particularly, no.
Why not?
Rwanda has been widely condemned by respectable, responsible human rights groups like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch. It's been called out for things like enforced disappearances, unfair trials, attacks and suppression on freedom of expression. And generally, if you don't agree with the government, you are at risk. You're at risk of being framed on false charges and, even worse, ending up in a torture detention centre.
Do you think Rwanda is worse than Albania?
A place to send asylum seekers and refugees.
All right. What's worse then, Rwanda or Albania?
Well, definitely, I'd say probably Rwanda.
So why can't we send people back to Albania?
Progress, more so than Rwanda. The other point I'd like to add, Patrick, is that we know that one of the detention centres, which is now being converted into, or has been converted into, a hostel for people in difficulty, it has been housing refugees from the Rwandan genocide up until earlier this year, when the Rwandan government forced out those refugees from the genocide to make way for asylum seekers deported from Britain. That's a shocking treatment of Rwandan citizens
just quickly then, so
grave persecution.
Yeah, so, well, I think we can all agree, and as is pretty obvious, we were, as indeed the entirety of the British media was, expecting a verdict on this court today, which is why we'd really booked this feature in. However, we've not properly had that. So let's assume now that, I don't know, Monday we get this, and the High Court does rule, Peter, that we can send people off to Rwanda. Will you have to accept that? Because that's our court, isn't it? That's the rule of law.
Well, just because a court says something doesn't make it right.
Well, where does that end, Peter?
The court sent the top part of martyrs to Australia. Most people recognise that was a very unjust decision.
Peter, you must have been involved in a few court cases in your time, and no doubt you've won a few, right? You were all right with the courts then, weren't you? So, hang on a minute. The reality is you just don't want anyone to go to Rwanda. That's what it is, regardless of what the law says, Peter.
Well, I will wait and hear what the judgment is and the reasons for it. But on the basis of the known evidence of human rights abuses in Rwanda, I think that would be very, very unsafe, very unwise, very unfair to send people who have fled persecution in many cases to a country where political persecution is the norm. OK, little bit of wider context then from Peter, which is that if things carry on the way they are doing right now and people keep coming across the channel or from elsewhere and keep being put in various different hotels and at whatever cost that is, it was £5 million a day, but that was at least probably about 6 months ago, so goodness only knows what it is now. Then they're eating up local housing stock as well, with the Home Office coming in and, I suppose you could argue, undercutting the private rental market. How do we actually sort this? If you don't want anyone to go, who pays for people to stay in this country? Because, Peter, what I would say is if you went into any pub in the country and asked people there, do you want to pay more tax so that some of these people can spend longer in this country, I don't think many people would say yes. Well, if the refugees are genuine, and most of them are, they've suffered extreme persecution in their home countries, of course we should provide them with a safe haven, just as much as we would want people to give us a safe haven if we were fleeing a country where we were being tortured, jailed, raped and subjected to other terrible crimes. But having said that, the number one priority to cut the public spending is to allow refugees to work while their claims are processed. At the moment, we have an absurd system where they're not allowed to work. We house them at public expense in often quite squalid, but nevertheless Home Office funded hostels. And we pay them about £40 a week to live on, which is impossible.
Peter, could I just ask?
Transport, etc. What we should do is let them work, because many of these refugees have skills that we need, and then they'd be paying tax and national insurance, so they'd be contributing to the public finances.
I'm not necessarily against that idea, actually, by the way, about letting people work. I think it's better that than just having them languishing in a Holiday Inn in Maidenhead, for example, which is, and often as well in Holiday Inns or various different other hotels where there's naffle to do around. So they hang around all day and then you end up with a lot of local residents, rightly so, in my opinion, by the way. You know, I'd be a bit miffed if my house was on the market and then all of a sudden an asylum seeker hotel pops up next door. I reckon you can shave a couple of $100,000 off that. But I want to know from you, Peter, really, where you think this really ends. Because as far as I can see, unless someone gets tough with our borders, we just have to accept as a country that things are going to change indefinitely. Things are going to change irreversibly, especially when it comes to the demographics of this country.
Well, I think the number one priority is, of course, to ensure that we work with other international countries and agencies to deal with the problems that cause refugees to flee. So, for example, there are many, many Syrians now in Britain. And that is because we turned and looked the other way when the dictator president, Bashar...
but just on that, sorry. Just on that, I know I'm aware I'm interrupting, but we're pressed for time. Peter, if you were an asylum seeker, you'd be able to prove it pretty quickly, wouldn't you? Why does it take so long for some people? Isn't a lot of that to do with the fact they ditch their documents in the Channel?
No, there are lots of different reasons. But on my foundation, my Peter Tatchell Foundation, we help many refugees and asylum seekers. And I can assure you that 99.9% of them are genuine. We have been able to establish clear evidence that they've suffered persecution in their home countries. And yes, the system takes too long because it's not properly staffed. The government should add more staff to the Home Office to expedite these cases so that those who are not genuine can be more swiftly...
All right, Peter, we'll end it there. Peter. I've got to end it there, Peter. I'm getting shouted at.